Hey, what's going on? I'm Kevin. This is the In My Head podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening. I'm grateful for your support. As always, give us a rating, a thumbs up, whatever it is, whatever platform you're listening on. We really appreciate the support that allows more people to find this. And more than anything, just share it with somebody if you think it would help. But I'm excited for today's episode. I sat down with Katt Reavis, and she works in law enforcement, and she reached out to me, and it was great talking to her. I feel like we had a good conversation. She works in law enforcement in Arizona, and we had a conversation about mental health among public safety professionals. So not just the police force, but fire department, paramedic, emergency rescue, nursing. It's a problem that I knew existed, but not near as much as the times that I've had conversations with Katt and during this podcast. She talks about statistics with suicide rates among police officers, that even in New York with the NYPD in 1 month, there was 5 or 6 suicides. You know, in 9 days, there was 3, basically every other day at one time. These were devastating things for me to hear, and I'm happy that she's getting this message out, and she had good news that it's becoming more common to talk about these things within law enforcement and in public safety professions. And so I think that's great there. I can't imagine, the type of stress that these jobs require and that you're in every single day. From a basic traffic stop, something could happen, and it's no wonder that there is these issues and these struggles with mental health within these professions. They see things that I don't think we're ever meant to see. But I'm extremely grateful that we have these men and women that are serving in public safety, not only in law enforcement, firefighting, medical, but our military. There's so many people sacrificing time with their family and sacrificing doing things that, many of us take for granted so that they can provide they can contribute in their family, but not only that they can provide safety for all of us. And it's something I definitely take for granted. And I had a great time talking to her. So she has started something that is in the process of becoming a nonprofit called Protected. And you can find them at protected_project. You can find them on Instagram. And she talks about this, and I'm so happy that there's someone like her doing this, that it's going to provide resources across the entire country for people in these professions that can openly talk about and with confidentiality, talk about mental illness, suicidality, anxiety, depression, PTSD, and that they can have the resources necessary to get the help that they need, without fear of judgment or losing their job or not being able to provide for their family. And I'm just grateful that people like Katt are out there. I had a great time talking to her, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. So please welcome Katt Reavis.
In My Head is a free-form discussion podcast where we talk about issues of mental and physical health and well-being. This is not meant to be a diagnosis or treatment plan, but rather a place to share real stories and insights from professionals and people who have or are battling mental illness. We hope to create a community where people feel comfortable and happy with who they are. Hopefully this is helpful for you, and please share it with others. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're officially rolling. I'm here with Katt Reavis. Thank you so much, Katt, for being here on the podcast.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you reaching out to me. You reached out to me a couple weeks ago, and we're here to talk about a program that you've developed called Protected. And you are one of the very first people we've had on this podcast talking about this issue, and it's specifically mental health among public safety professionals. And so can you open that up a little bit for us? Well, first off, give us maybe your background in law enforcement and your history with that.
Right. Okay. So I'm a corrections officer currently. Started in January of 2014, went through the academy. So it's been 5.5 years of working in the jail setting. And, in that time, I've made a lot of friends and contacts with all types of law enforcement, with Border Patrol, city cops, county cops. We're always kind of like all around each other in the jail. Like everyone, I work for a county jail. It's not Department of Corrections. So jail is where everyone comes first. So
Right.
lots of contacts. It's a big facility. We have lots of employees. So just meeting a lot of people and different personalities and seeing the struggles that different people have and how certain parts of the job affect them made me want to start this for all public safety professionals, including nurses and EMS and firefighters and even, military. They have a whole other category of stress that they're under.
Right.
But I wanted something that was kind of personal to those individual professions, because in my experience, going to talk to someone to get help about a certain thing, you can spend, your first 3 sessions with a therapist or a counselor just trying to explain to them your job and try to get them to understand where you're coming from. And you might not even be successful at that. If you don't
Right.
work that job, you kind of just, you don't know exactly. You can try to understand, and it's for someone that works like in corrections or law enforcement or something, going to someone that works what you do brings like a kind of peace that like, that you don't have to explain yourself, that you can just go straight to a topic and they're going to understand. They're probably going to have been there before. So, it just makes it easier and it more like comforting, I guess.
I really appreciate you opening that up for us. And this is going to be so helpful for people listening. For me, this is kind of a problem I've known that has gone on. But when you reached out to me, you and I chatted, and then I did my own research, and I was kind of blown away by how prevalent of a problem it is, mental health with law enforcement, public safety in general. So could you open this up for us a little bit? Depression, suicidality, PTSD, anxiety, these types of things that public professionals are facing. Could you maybe enlighten me and our listeners on that?
Right. So I think that it's finally hitting the news, which is something that we didn't see. It's always been a problem. But it kind of got swept under the rug until recently, because departments don't want to admit that they have a mental health problem within their department and their officers. It almost makes them look weak, which is the stigma that like I'm trying to fix and get away from, because it's not a weakness thing. It should be expected that you expect these officers or nurses, EMS, firefighters to go take care of the things in the world that other people don't want to see. It bothers a normal person to see horrific car accidents and things where, you drive by and you're like, wow, someone should do something about that. We are the people who do something about that. And, someone has to. So we go, we deal with it, and then that's it. Like, there's really nothing else for us to deal with it. It's just kind of like, oh, you did your job, you handled the situation, and that's like kind of where the departments end it. There's not really like a follow-up, okay, let's talk about this. Like, that was kind of hard to see. Like, this is what we saw. Let's talk through this. And luckily in my department, when there is like an officer involved shooting, things like that, or big incidents, even like in the jail, we'll all have a debrief and we'll go and we'll sit down and we'll talk about, what everyone did, and it kind of like puts the pieces of the puzzle together, which I think is really important in a critical incident. So you kind of know, in the moment you're so stressed out, you might see something and like it's your partner doing something, but you're not quite sure like what it is. And when you sit down and talk about it afterwards, it kind of puts a story together. And that's like a part of having closure in a critical incident. So I think that that's really important. We've seen more suicides in the news, with officers committing suicide. I know NYPD has had several in the news recently. They had a lot of suicides, like one right after another. And, that is, terribly devastating for a department, that affects everyone. It affects so many people. And, as horrible as that is, I'm glad it's finally hitting the news and we're seeing that there is an issue. Instead of just sweeping it under the rug and departments not talking about it, it's coming out and people are like, wow, like yeah, like it's completely understandable. So I'm really glad that it's hitting the news and that we can finally do something about it. Once we know about it, we can take some action and try to fix it.
Right. I was blown away and heartbroken. When I went all through your Instagram, looked at every post, and was heartbroken at some of the statistics I saw that I had no clue. There was one, I just got my notes here. One said 3 suicides in 9 days. I think that was in New York, maybe.
Yeah. Yes.
And then you said in the past 3 years, more law enforcement officers died from suicide than line of duty deaths. And that's so sad. And I agree with you. While it's so sad, I'm so glad that it's hitting the news and people are aware of it more. And like you said, for good reason. I mean, like what you as law enforcement officers deal with and see on maybe day to day, week to week, month to month, the types of things you see. I don't think the human brain is equipped to deal with all that without some type of supplemental therapy or training or practice. You know what I mean? And so, yeah. Is there something that law enforcement officers receive to cope with these things, like in practice, or is it kind of just true grit, be tough, like you'll see crazy stuff and
yeah, it's a little bit of both. You're absolutely right. So like in the academy, luckily my department is really good with this, but I know that there's smaller departments out there where like in the academy, they just give them the basic training, tell them you're going to see some crazy stuff. Godspeed, like go, you're blessed, go do your job.
Right.
But my department, I actually teach in the academy. For corrections, I teach suicide prevention and stress management, which, like I said, my department's really good with that stuff. And it's like an ongoing battle to remind, I want to say recruits, but like once they graduate, remind the officers throughout their career, remind them that, yes, there is help for them. My department has a EAP, Employee Assistance Program, where there is free counseling offered to them and their family members, 5 sessions per topic, for completely free of any cost that they can go. And it's a third party too, which is great because, sometimes you don't want to talk to someone within your department. Exactly. I think an officer's worst fear is having their gun taken from them. That's super embarrassing and demeaning. For someone to basically taking your gun from you is the equivalent of saying you're not equipped to do your job. And that, any public safety profession, your job comes to a certain extent, it becomes your identity, that you're there so much and you see like your partners more than your family sometimes. And for someone to say you can't do your job, that is completely devastating. So I think that's really important to talk to someone outside of your department sometimes, and it's completely anonymous. So like your department member, your command staff won't find out about, what is said in that session. So yeah, I think that is a great thing that my department has, but I know a lot of departments do not have that. I'm not sure if like on the fire side of the house, EMS nurses, I'm not sure if they have that. And I want Protected to be that. I have contacts for every category. I have a military contact, nursing, fire, EMS. If someone were to come to me from a certain profession and they want to talk to someone in that specific profession, I have someone for them that they can talk to. And I'm planning on building that network and getting more and more people. So I can kind of like make it specialized to them. Like if they are having family issues, I can, I'll have someone who understands that, who, has gone through the same thing. Law enforcement and firefighters, they have, unfortunately, the highest rates of divorce. And it's come straight back to how stressful the job is. It's extremely stressful. And to have family at home that doesn't necessarily understand that stress is hard. You don't have someone to talk to. And I think that contributes to that high divorce rate. But if you're seeking help outside of that relationship, if you're going and talking to someone, then I think that makes it easier at home, that you kind of get that off your chest and you can go home and do your family thing and just be happier, be healthier. And when you're mentally and emotionally okay, you do your job better, you perform better at work. And, I don't know what employer wouldn't want that.
Right. Well, and I was going to ask you do you feel like mental health, like mental illness in law enforcement is on the rise, or do you feel like it's always been a problem? It just hasn't been talked about?
Both.
Yeah.
I think like law enforcement definitely has changed. We've seen even in like the past 4 years, it's definitely changed. People are being, I guess, more disrespectful openly towards law enforcement. I've since the beginning of time, there's always been people who don't like cops. I think we all know this. But now, like, it's getting worse and worse. I think it's extra stress. It's just additional stress that you're going to have to deal with. But like I said earlier, I think that it's just talked about a little bit more now, especially with like social media. I think everything, like, knowledge is just like anything that you want to know, you can just search on your phone, you can Google it, things like that. So I think that like that knowledge is just like coming out more than before. It was just not really there. And then departments didn't want to talk about it, but now it's like, all right, this is okay. We need to address it and fix it. That's it. And the first step is just talking about it, not pretending like it's not happening.
Well, and I think people got to be aware of what it's like. And you can never know, like you said, you can never know unless you are there. Unless you are a police officer, a firefighter, a nurse, medical professional, like you mentioned, you can't know unless you're there. But people have to open their eyes to the level of stress that a regular police officer experiences day to day. I told you about growing up being a skateboarder and having no respect for police officers. I was just like, whatever, and just always thought they were power tripping. And it wasn't until as a senior in high school, and I had a criminal justice class by Officer Hunt, and he showed us these videos of basic traffic stops, stopping somebody for speeding, stopping somebody who didn't have their registration, and getting up to their window, then pulling a gun, a knife, and within a split second, killing an officer or wounding them for the rest of their life, paralyzing them. And people were not aware of the reality of that, the stress that can happen just with a basic traffic stop. And so when you're operating at this level of your sympathetic nervous system, this level of intensity, people got to understand that. That's something that people got to be aware of. And it's no wonder that mental health, mental illness goes along with these professions. And I mean, goodness, like we just had school shootings, a weekend ago, and nobody, whatever people feel about the police, they are so grateful that they are there because of them, this was a tragedy, but because of them, it was stopped way faster, and it could have been way worse. Even though it was terrible, it could have been way worse. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which was kind of a breath of fresh air to see that departments were backing their police officers and saying how great of a job that they did. And the public was thanking them, which is something that we all see. The public doesn't necessarily always do that when officers do good jobs. And it always hits the news when officers do something bad. But, millions of times a day, officers are doing great, incredible things that are really helping and changing people's lives. And the news never picks that up. We don't of it. So it's only when an officer does something that is questionable or bad that, everyone hears about it. And that's another stress that, you go through a critical incident and then the news tears you apart. It hits social media. The comments are horrible. And then if it goes to trial, the attorneys are tearing you apart, and it just feels like you can't do anything right. And every little thing is going to be scrutinized. Even if you had great intentions and you had to make a decision in a split second, it is going to be a nightmare. And something that we tell our officers after a critical incident is don't watch the news. Don't watch the news. Don't, stay off your phone. Don't be on social media. Like, don't search anything. Don't read the comments, because that is going to make it so much worse. Like seeing the public who doesn't even know all the facts inserting their opinions. And it's something that I guess I wish the public understood more, but I understand that if you don't do the job, like you're probably not going to understand it. And you can definitely like look at one side of the story and think of an opinion and be like, oh yeah, cops, they're on a power trip or whatever. But like, if you were actually there and if it was like you'd be in the same situation, you just, try to do your best and then hope that people don't tear you apart on social media.
Yeah. Well, the hard thing is, like you said, and like you said, I think the hard thing is with every profession, the public focuses on the negative things that happen. Can you imagine tuning into the news and they listed all the positive things that happened that day with law enforcement? Like each night it's like 13,500 successful police interactions today, instead of like one person was shot, or one thing went terrible. And so it's so easy to jump on people and tear them down. But it's a profession that I greatly respect and can't imagine what it's like to be in those stressful situations. I want to make sure I give you plenty of time to talk about Protected. This is a program that you started. Did you say it's turning into a nonprofit, or maybe give us background of what led you to doing this and what is it exactly?
Yes. So we're in the process of filing for a nonprofit status. We will be making no profit off of this. None of us would feel comfortable doing that. We're doing this because it's our passion. It's what we want to do. We see that there's a problem. We've seen the devastation that suicide causes in departments and for family members. And we want to stop that. We want to prevent that as much as we possibly can. And we see our partners or people in the jail, in the facility, that they change when they get in there. Like they don't even want to, say good morning to you anymore. And like, you can just tell that the job definitely, it changes you. That level of stress that you're constantly operating under, it does change you. It makes you a different person. And we just need to have that healthy outlet of talking about these things and being able to push past it. And if we talk about it before it turns into a big thing, that's the best time to do it. We don't want to, definitely talk no matter how bad it is, like what stage you're at, you should be talking about it. But to get it earlier before it progresses to something where you're on that metaphorical ledge is the best time to talk about it. And I think that people don't, they don't want to talk about it, or they're in like denial, like, I'm just in a mood or something. And then it just keeps getting worse and it gets worse and worse and worse. And then they're, blowing up at work or something. And they're just like, I can't take this anymore. And then someone has to get involved and it becomes more of like an intervention thing, which that's, it's great. It's better than nothing. But ideally, I like to see the warning signs that someone's under stress and go approach them and talk to them. We're really bad in law enforcement about saying, I'm hurting. I need to talk to someone. I'm really upset about something. I'm not doing well mentally. I need to talk. That's really hard for us. We're law enforcement. We're corrections officers. We're supposed to have all the answers and go and fix the problems. If there's something going on, like we have the answer, we're going to fix it. And when we can't fix ourselves, like it's kind of, I guess, an ego or a pride thing that we just don't want to talk about. So I like to personally approach other people and kind of start that hard conversation and, ask them how they're doing and not be afraid to say, are you lying to me? Like, are you just saying that you're fine? And, have that hard conversation. It might be awkward and it might open a whole box of emotions, and you might find out things that it leads to a really hard conversation. And something that I think people are scared of is having that hard conversation. And what if someone says, yeah, I'm suicidal? Like, is it going to be awkward? Like, people just kind of get in their head and they don't want to have that awkward conversation. So they just kind of like avoid it. Like they just, kind of try to drive around it. And then, like, what if someone tells you like, yeah, I'm suicidal, and you have to like take action. Like you have to take them to the hospital or something, like if it's that bad, like, and what if they get mad at me? Cause they probably will, like you're kind of forcing them at that point. Like, no, you gotta get help. And, what if they get mad at you, and what if they hate you and that's like your partner, and, you just get in your head about it. But I think that that's like a best case scenario, that your partner hates you because you got them help. At least they're there still to hate you. And I know that I think Danny Bates, she posted that video of her daughter who was crying after her husband had committed suicide. I really respect her for posting that video. I think that's great. And that's gotten out to so many people. And I definitely keep that in the back of my mind, that suicide affects so many people. It'll affect your entire department, that anyone who's ever worked with you or passed you in the hallway is going to be thinking, what did I miss? What could I have done? And then the family too, it's just so devastating for families that, I really want this to end. And I want I want all public safety to know that there's options. There's always another option. And I know when you get into that kind of depression hole, you get in your head and you start to think that you've exhausted all of your options. But if you take a step back and you're on the outside looking in, you can be like, no, like you have all these options, but it's just presenting them to that person and helping them work through it, and like having a game plan, and what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? I think that conversation is really important.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you 100%. Thanks for sharing all that. I think that's so helpful. And for me, I agree. I think your mind tells you a lie that certain people will be better off if you're gone, and I think it's helping people understand that is a lie that your mind is telling you. And no matter what, I'm sure in law enforcement, people go through these hellish experiences. And for one, they're like, I can't talk to my family about it, so they feel alone. I can't open up to my partner because maybe I'll look weak, or what does that say about me? And then this lie about people will be better off without me because I'm probably holding them back and all that. And it's really just not true. And I think for me, I've always thought about this. I've thought of if I got to that point and then you look afterwards at all the good experiences that have happened to you after that moment, and you're like, yeah, there's been a lot of good things that I would have missed out on, that I wouldn't have experienced that had I taken that drastic step of ending my life. And I'm sure in law enforcement, it's increased that much more of the stigma of getting help. Like you said, like if I reach out to somebody, like you said, are they going to take my badge? Are they going to take my gun? Is that going to mean I can't work anymore? It doesn't mean I'm weak, that I'm not good enough for this job. It means so many thoughts got to be racing through an officer's head when they're experiencing this.
Right. And I think that's like one of the issues that that officers have, is like a trust issue, that they're not sure who they can talk to because they don't want, one, a rumor spread about them for everyone to find out. And two, they don't want like command staff to find out and think that they're weak and be like, oh no, let's not give them that special assignment because, something might happen that they can't handle. And like, just to have that like label put on you, or that like kind of target put on your back, I think is a major stress that we have. Like we just have kind of trust issues, I guess. And you don't want to say the wrong thing. And like, what if you go get help and you get diagnosed with like, anxiety or something, and then you have to go to court and an attorney somehow finds out and uses it against you in court. And like, there's just so many possibilities of things that can go wrong that go through law enforcement officers' heads, because we're so used to thinking ahead and trying to think into the future of what might this turn into. that we overthink it, and then we're scared to get help now in the now, because, what if the wrong person finds out, or what if it's used against me in court, or what if they say that I can't have this job anymore and they take my gun and my badge. And confidentiality is major. That's what protected is. No one will find out about it. It's going to be completely confidential. Our employee assistant program through my department is completely confidential. I encourage other departments, if they don't have a similar employee assistance program, to do that, give your officers that option. And it's free, and that's great. That's major. Like, you just have to make the appointment and go, basically. And I think that that's a really, really, really great option for any department to give their officers. And that's another thing that I would like to do with Protected, is find out what departments don't have this and go and talk to them and see what I can do to get that for the officers. It's available to their family members as well, because, the one person's going through stress, the other family members are going to wonder what they're doing wrong or what they can do to help. And I think that will help the entire family a lot. So that would be my wish for smaller departments and departments that don't have that. Do that for your employers, your officers.
So is Protected, are you starting locally in Arizona and spreading out, or is it a program you're trying to reach out state to different departments? Is it an online thing? How does that look?
As of right now, it's an online thing, reaching out to all different departments. You can contact us over social media on Instagram. It is protected_project. And just shoot us a message and let us know some basic information. We'll match you up to someone who can talk to you, definitely. But it's more than just local. We have big plans, so yeah. We'll hopefully be reaching out to some departments and being able to go and talk. I teach at my academy right now through my department, but it'd be nice to reach out to other departments and maybe teach in their academy or their annual training with their officers. Go talk to some firefighters, things like that.
Yeah, so I'm super intrigued by this. You said you teach in your department. What does that look like? Is it are these weekly, monthly classes, and what is being taught? And if you could enlighten me, I'm super interested in it. So
yeah, so it's in our basic academy right now for our corrections officers. It's a 8-week program. The entire academy is, and in the first week, I go and teach suicide prevention is the first class. And it's basically just warning signs and things to look out for, and how to deal with these things. And the retired lieutenant that teaches it with me, he has some really great stories. He's been with the department for a very long time, and he's seen some unfortunately very tragic things. So he has some stories that really kind of drive the point home about officers that have committed suicide within our department, and what it looked like, the leading up to it, and the effects that it caused on the department members and the family. And unfortunately, when someone in a family commits suicide, the likelihood of someone else within that family, be it a child or a spouse, also committing suicide at some point, becomes a higher risk. And that's unfortunately what happened with one of our department members. His daughter committed suicide when she was, I think, 15, after her father committed suicide, and he worked for the department. So there's, we have some stories like that we let the recruits know that this is very real. We're not just making this stuff up. And, they are recruits. So it's preparing them for this stress and letting them know how to get help and ask for help, and what's available to them through peer support, which we have a peer support team in our department, or the employee assistance program, things like that. Just like letting them know that this is very real. But on the same note, they're recruits still. I think it's important to touch base with them a year later, 2 years later, after they've gotten into the job and they're dealing with that real life stress, to see how they're doing. So I teach that suicide prevention class. And then in the very last week of the academy, I teach a stress management class, which is just lets them know, basically go back to basics to deal with the stress. Make sure that you're doing the basic things. You're taking care of yourself. You're working out. You continue to work out after the academy. Because when you leave the academy, you might be in the best shape that you've ever been in your life. And it's important to maintain that, your physical condition, and, make sure you're drinking water and eating right. Like the basic things that are going to help you deal with that stress as like a preventative measure to put you in a good place going into a very stressful situation. And then how to deal with the after effects of a stressful situation, and, what that looks like, what a critical incident looks like, and what to expect. And so when it happens, you're not wondering if this is normal or if you're like in extra trouble because of something. So just to kind of like give them a preview of what's going to happen, just in case like the worst case scenario does happen, like there is a critical incident, and how to deal with it, and all the options that are available to them.
I saw an article recently. I can't remember where this was, but it showed a whole police department basically doing meditation together. And I thought it was rad because they're just kind of, taking care of your physical. It was kind of, at first it was kind of funny because you're just seeing all these tough men and women officers, and they're all sitting Indian style, like, basically namaste, but I thought it was awesome because I'm like, it's such a heavy environment that they go into every single day, and to take that moment of self-reflection, it's got to be hard to remind yourself every day, like why you're doing the job you're doing. I'm sure you, as a police officer, you have to remind yourself that often, that I'm doing this for public safety. I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this, like, who else is going to do it? You know what I mean? So it's, whether it's meditation, yoga, I love the stuff you've been talking about eating right, and having the help available to them, I think is so necessary because it's such a high stress level job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just have like two more questions for you. And it's like, best case scenario, what do you imagine for Protected like 5 years from now? What type of resources would be available, and what would Protected look like in a best world case scenario?
I would love to have like a hotline phone number that people can call, 24/7. Right now, like if someone contacts me via social media, the Protected page, any time of day, I'll have someone that can contact them and talk to them. But it'd be nice to have like a specific phone number that I can put out there. Ideally, working on getting the nonprofit status. So that would be great. I would love to travel to different departments to talk to their officers or nurses, EMS, military, and have talk to like command staff in departments and see what they can do to help their employees, what they can set up for them, and what they can do to constantly remind them that these things are available to them as well, and not just have it be like a one-time thing, like, hey, you need help here, and then they never hear about it again. Then you have like new people come in that never even heard about it in the first place. Like, it needs to be like a constant thing to remind people that this is available to them and it's a good idea, and make it less of a like hush hush thing. That talk about it, let people know that this is totally okay and fine, and it doesn't make you weak or not fit to do the job or anything like that. So yeah, I would love to go around and talk to different departments, be it recruits or annual training, command staff. That would be ideal.
That's awesome. I think the fact that it comes from someone like you and other people qualified that are experiencing the same things they're experiencing, I think is huge. I mean, that makes all the difference, right? Someone they can relate to. So where can people find you, Katt? Where can people find information about Protected and keeping up with all the good things that you guys are doing?
Yeah. So, on Instagram, we have protected_project, and you can contact us on there. We're working on getting a website. There's going to be other things. I think right now Instagram is going to be the place to go to keep up to date on all of the progress as we go along. We're hoping to get some events, things like that going. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, Katt, thank you so much for reaching out. And more than anything, thank you so much for your service that you do every single day. Very appreciative of it. And I just really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.